Beta Ramesh, क्या चल रहा है आजकल? Oh, sorry, wrong podcast. Welcome to Think Fast. How are you, Suchita? What's going on?
How orchestrated was that? Beta Ramesh, which beta whose name is Ramesh were you talking to before me,
So I have
Varun?
a problem. I try to I call my 6-month-old son by different names every day at different points of time. Which I randomly come up with. So at some point, I feel the poor guy is
Uh-huh.
going to get confused because he has been called Carlos, he has been called Ramesh, he's been called Subara
Oh my
also in between.
God.
Poor guy might. I've been told that I confuse him, which is could be right, but it is
You
fun to
confuse
do,
me
so I should do
also.
it.
You
That's
you
true.
confuse I think you confuse a lot of people, Varun. Just
Has such
I
different
mean with your
personalities.
jokes. I
Such different
know, you
personalities.
really do. Such a
Yes.
multi-charactered, layered, nuanced person you are.
Yes. I
With
am.
terrible jokes, no matter
I
what
am
nuance you take.
Inception in one person. One person Inception.
Acha, okay. Any other compliments you want to give to yourself? I'm Ritik Roshan in one person. I am whatever else in one person.
I'm Ritik
Vishnu,
Roshan in
why
one
don't you
person. Just sounds very wrong right now. But anyway,
why don't we get Vishnu on the stream, because Vishnu knows how to compliment you. All that Vishnu does is compliment you day in and day out.
for context, everybody, Vishnu is handling sound, and he always knows I have pristine sound when I start this podcast. But
Excuse me,
Suchita
Vishnu is
always needs
biased.
help in
Vishnu
setting up the
is
right sound.
obsessed with Varun. Basically, that's a TLDR of this. And Vishnu has killed my light. So now I look like some bhootni from our hut in our YouTube video. But in any case,
To
now
start
that we
off
have.
this episode, we have gone behind Art and Ramesh. And what happened this week? What happened? What happened? Why don't you tell the first story? And I shall take it from there.
Spain has become the first European country to entitle workers to paid menstrual leave as it passed numerous sexual and reproductive rights laws, including ones expanding abortion and transgender rights. Without getting to the second half of this statement, because if we say anything, we will definitely get cancelled. What do you make of this, man?
Um,
Paid
you know,
menstrual leave?
it is something that's been discussed for a while, and I feel in many organizations it actually happens without being set in stone. Like you can take a day off you know, if you're having a bad period, and I feel that happens generally. I think in most modern organizations, but I guess
Yeah.
something like this blanket wise and from in a country level is something to kind of look at and seeing how that kind of on one point enhances rights for women, but also kind of like at some point hope it doesn't become a scenario where it it's used people use it negatively to project
Hmm.
against women employees. I think that's the danger there, which should be guarded against. They should have some. I haven't read the law, but should be stipulated in that sense that it can't be used as a negative.
Yeah, yeah. Which is tough to do, no? I mean,
Yeah,
look at what
yeah,
like maternity leave policies have basically become in
yeah.
India. But before we get into any of that, in
Yes.
other news,
Indian cryptocurrency exchange Wazirex has shut down its NFT marketplace, which it launched in June 2021. Wasn't this an acquisition?
shocker! Oh my God, what a shocker!
It was
Wasn't
an
it
acquisition,
acquisition?
right? If I remember, they had acquired a platform which became their NFT marketplace, if I remember right.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, let's the interesting thing about Web3 is that that is a core part of the future, but
Hmm.
just how all of this stuff kind of played out is, I think the NFT piece was just like people got overexcited. It should really be used for art, but
Yeah.
it just became like I drew a doodle and I will
Anything
sell
and
it.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And there were some of the most like randomest things like they were selling. Like any movie started coming out, the movie has an NFT. I'm like, for what? Like
Yeah, yeah. But the reason for
yeah,
shutting it down is interesting. Basically, in a sentence, sorry, the company said in a statement, unfortunately, it did not gain much traction.
fair
Uh,
enough. And
yes.
well, let's also considering how WazirX by itself, its trading volume has gone down by what 76%
Yeah.
last year. So I think overall across the board, because of how cryptos kind of behaved, with no wonder NFTs are like obviously not getting traction
Hmm.
because even cryptocurrency is in
Crypto
a
itself.
in a bad state.
Yes,
Who
Queen.
do they thank for that? Who do they have to thank for this? That one person, which we like to talk about occasionally. Uh,
Definitely not Mr. Mukesh Ambani, because guess what he's doing? He is streaming the IPL cricket games for free.
oh,
Wow. That's
that's called
insane.
That's like a baller thing to do, right? Like, I bought the
Dude,
rights. I know you guys have been charging for this all the time. I'm just gonna give it free so everybody comes to my platform and hopefully will never leave because he's
that
doing something
is,
else.
which is what?
Geo is mostly going to have an immense number of movies that will launch with around the IPL time. So every week you're going to have, if not one, but like a major premiere of sorts. And I think Netflix had
Hmm.
tried this a while back globally and India as well. But this is going to be at a much bigger scale. They've acquired a lot of content.
Yeah.
I've also heard from the grapevine that a lot of movies that Geo had actually gotten rights for um, have been like should have been released in OTT like a few months ago, are all on hold
Hmm.
because they're waiting for the platform revamp to happen just in time for the IPL. So this is going to be
Wow.
like all guns blazing. I'll get your attention. I'll get you on the platform with the IPL, but I'm going to hold
And
you
then I'll
in.
upsell you with this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the seems to be the plan.
But dude, think about this. How many people in India, slash, how many companies in India can actually afford this as a strategy? You know what I mean?
Nobody.
Like,
One company. That's
which
them.
is just Reliance Jio. That's
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
That's all.
So if you can do it,
Boss
why won't you
Megamart.
do it?
I
It's a
I
boss move.
agree. I agree. And there's another boss making a lot of moves. Mr. Bill Gates has acquired a minority stake in Heineken Holding NV. The holding
Hmm.
company is called NV, I think. I don't know what this is. The
No, it's called
controlling
Heineken.
share.
It's called Heineken Holding NV
Heineken
is what it's
Holding
called.
NV. Acha, okay, got it.
Hmm.
This was highlighted only up to a
He
certain
spent
point.
$902 million is what he spent for
Oh my God,
3.8%.
that's it. That is it. No, but this is interesting. You were talking about how like he usually hasn't made too many public
Yeah.
bets, or at least like picked up in news cycle bets in non-tech spaces.
Yeah. And also because I mean, look at this, he focuses largely on like you hear him talking about vaccines and
Hmm.
disease control and hunger and everything else. This seems to be like a very like it's not something you would expect from him. So it
Yeah,
might just be one of those like okay, this is something which might be a good investment for his portfolio because that's how he would be investing this much money considering how much money he has.
yeah.
But I doubt this is like a deeper involvement kind of a investment. Although it's a fair, he's got a fair share now with the amount of percentage he's got.
That is true. That is true. Moving on.
Moving on, chalo chalo, आगे क्या हुआ? Um, EdTech firm Byju's has denied a media report that it was considering a plan to shut White Hat Junior, their EdTech coding startup, which they acquired in 2020. I so here's my thing. They denied it, and they
Hmm.
obviously, but you still wouldn't blame them for wanting to shut it down because it's not like it's done wonders for them. It's honestly been a pain in the butt
PR
because of just
disaster.
in terms of PR. Plus, also, it's not like it's been making money or has
Yeah,
even been
yeah,
like or rather, it's been bleeding a lot of money. So, do you
yeah.
blame them if they actually planned it?
I mean, your take on this aside, because 100% if they were planning for this, it would maybe not prima facie make sense because, and when I say prima facie, I mean, more in terms of like people's perception of this acquisition because they spent $300 million buying the company apparently in a mix of cash and stock, if I'm not mistaken. But I think my issue is with these like random leaks because basically I think this piece of news was leaked by TechCrunch, if I'm not mistaken, and it
I think so.
seemed
Yeah.
like it may have been like a line in a conversation. You know what I mean? It's almost like as if
Hmm.
imagine you and I are talking about something and I loosely say 5 words. And then those
Hmm.
5 words get, pushed out into the media and become like a brouhaha of sorts. And obviously, Byju's doesn't have any dearth of PR nightmares that are, stalking them. They've pretty much been on the down low ever since the middle of last year from a
Hmm.
public relations and news cycle perspective. But I just found the way the story was broken a little absurd. It just seemed like it was a conversation that had casually come up while discussing
Hmm.
numbers, financials, and the likes. And I don't know, did you feel the same way? It was kind of blown out of proportion.
Um, well, I guess we won't know the truth because
Yeah.
was it something they were considering? Was it something that was just a off discussion? But again, I agree that this whole like oh we've heard this one line and let's make it an article thing has been going around for a long time now. So we won't be surprised if it's either case. But I'm just
Hmm.
sticking to my guns and saying maybe the reporters also need to wear a slightly longer, thoughtful hat when they write these
Yes,
articles.
that is correct. And
Thought
on
about
to
the
the
hat,
next.
because
Oh,
it's
yeah.
about
Oh,
white
I
hats, Junior.
totally missed that. Totally
That
missed
white,
that. So I'm
the
going to
hat.
jump to Spotify, which is more
Ah,
interesting than your hat, unending segue. Apparently, they're launching a TikTok esque vertical swiped feed in an effort to attract more Gen Z listeners.
yeah.
Are you, Mr. Wannabe Gen Z, going to tune in to Spotify's TikTok esque feature?
I'm what you call Jagat generational. I can blend with any generation. But that aside, uh,
Please, एक और compliment डाल दो. I don't know what all you've described yourself as from the start of this episode. In between
Jagat
you and
generation.
Vishnu, we should just rebrand this to the Doogie Show. Which didn't you have one Doogie Show?
Yeah, it's got rebranded later as Take a Pause.
Take
Yes,
a
it's a great show,
pause.
guys. Watch
Acha.
it. Please watch it Mondays and Thursdays.
Okay. Anything
But
else you want
anyway,
to plug in?
uh, no. Okay, so getting to Spotify. So the Spotify thing is interesting, right? They've been through a bit of a rough patch in recent times. Their huge podcast bet also didn't pay off the way they wanted to. They made all these expensive deals, everybody from the Obamas to like Meghan and Harry, and none of those shows really worked, or rather worked the way they thought it would. And even Joe Rogan,
Hmm.
right? At some point, you don't know how long that Joe Rogan deal is going to last, because
Yeah.
it's not like because I think the period's almost over that they signed him up for, and they have to renew it now. And there seems to be a renewed focus for them to move towards, okay, become more creative focused.
Hmm.
Let's get more ads. Let's kind of share more revenue with creators. Let's kind of go that direction of things, because those are the podcasts that are working for them, right?
Hmm.
If you look at the recent acquisitions they've made as well, a lot of them are very like they're very popular on social, etc., and a very they have a highly engaged audience. So I guess
Hmm.
it's almost like taking that and saying, what else can we do on the platform to make it a lot more in tune with what these creators might be doing as well.
Hmm.
And everything is TikTokified right now. So YouTube is TikTokified, Instagram anyway is, and I think the only people who haven't done it is LinkedIn. Even Twitter is interestingly looking like really doubling down on video. My
Yeah.
perspective on Twitter Blue has changed. I think it actually makes sense to subscribe. I'm subscribing this week.
Jeez.
Um,
Give
yeah,
us a rundown on how that subscription goes.
I shall, because I've seen some great use cases. So I'm going to try those out. So next week's episode, I'll give my TLDR on that. But back to Spotify, I think the larger point also is that they're trying to figure out how they can sustain and grow in an environment where their big bet isn't really paying off, and this seems to be a reaction to that.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, Spotify seems to also have a bunch of other features, within its belly. One of which is its AI feature called DJ,
Yeah,
which apparently is your personal music assistant that, quote unquote, knows your taste so well it can choose what to play for you.
yeah,
This, I feel like Chat GPT's functionality, like feeding
hmm.
in few pieces of data and then getting answers out of it will almost become a feature. Like it'll almost be like
It will
stories.
be on every single app on the world, which basically means that OpenAI will be across everything on Earth, and then it becomes a
No, not
sentient
really.
being and takes over
Generate.
the world. That's called
Abhi
Judgment Day.
yaar, this technology is built on top of like, crunching in a lot of pieces of information and data and regurgitating it in I mean, I'm making it sound very simplistic, but Chat GPT is not the only one who has this functionality. Like there are other, you know what I mean? Like there are like other AI tools
Yeah,
that can do this as well. But basically, what I was getting to is what's interesting is similar to how, like storification of everything happened or realification of everything happened. What would
mm,
actually be like a dampener in the chat GPT growth is if the functionality of it, right? You input
yeah,
something or you ask something and then a answer gets generated. What
yeah.
if that became like a general sort of like feature on the internet?
It already
Almost so
had. It's
commonplace.
already going there, right? You make
Yeah.
an interesting point. It's already going there. That's becoming an almost like obvious use case in every single platform. So, wouldn't be surprising. But
But
then
because
you got to
that's
see
what
how many
slowed down the
ecosystems there
growth
are.
of 100%, because if you look at the data, like that's what slowed down the growth of TikTok. It's so for example, TikTok still may be number one in terms of short form content, but YouTube launching shorts and Instagram launching reels has actually slowed down its growth, at least in the US, maybe not other countries. Sorry, you were saying something. I interrupted you with my excitement.
No, no, I wasn't saying.
Acha. No, but Spotify, yeah, man, lot is left to be seen, especially given their core business is definitely not the easiest to monetize. And as we all know, they bet big. on all things podcast and audio taking off?
I think their bet's still going to pay off to a decent extent, but their pivot to video and their pivot to being creative first is very important. And I know
Hmm.
we're going to discuss this later in the show, but even like how they look at playlists, how they look at music, also could be an interesting space for them to monetize. But we'll come to that story a little later. But there is definitely, I mean, they have some rethinking to do,
Hmm.
and their podcast piece is, I mean, they're lagging behind on YouTube, which actually announced this week in a very like tiny like conference. It wasn't like one of those big events where one of their heads was there, and he spoke about how they're testing podcast management options within YouTube Studio, which is where all creators kind of manage their accounts from. The interesting
Hmm.
part with this is that it gave a lot of pieces where you could you're basically putting up a video file of a podcast, but you can automatically distribute that through YouTube Music to audio platforms,
Hmm.
and you can even have the ads playing in, so your AdSense works exactly how it works on video in audio. So you have audios monetized exactly like how it the video is on YouTube. Lot more
Interesting.
data, and the depth of data you get on YouTube Studio is unmatched. Just in terms of how far you can go. Like in India, you can literally go around district wise, region wise data
How
in
interesting.
audience. So imagine getting that on a podcast, which is generally, if you look at all podcasting platforms, a bit of like a dark hole when it comes to the
Yeah.
depth of data you can access.
Yeah.
So it's interesting they're doing this now, and they've anyway kind of spoken about a few things. Sometime back, the head of YouTube Shorts was on Colin and Samir's podcast, and
Hmm.
he spoke about one piece is that if you today have a podcast episode and you cut a YouTube short out of it using their
Hmm.
remix function,
Hmm.
you can actually link it back to the big episode. So, for instance, I'm watching a YouTube short, I finish it, I can click on it, takes me to that episode in its full form.
Yeah.
And while today you have to do it in app, they might build up, they're looking to build that up as a functionality that becomes something you can upload. So you can upload a YouTube short from your episode, and it works as a discovery tool for your main episode. So think of just the way that is flowing.
Yeah.
And you would then say that YouTube is the ground zero of podcasts, especially the kind which don't require, let's say, larger narrative like fiction, etc. But it's going to be very interesting to see how on one end YouTube's really figured this one out, and
Hmm.
Spotify on the other end is really trying to like rethink how they do this.
Yes, long live radio. And very quickly, other pieces of funsy news is the United States is nominating former MasterCard CEO Ajay Banga to lead the World Bank. President Joe Biden announced on Thursday. I am so happy. I'm just genuinely very happy when Indians succeed.
And he's also
And
like
they
a
seem
very
to be
good CEO at
succeeding.
Mastercard, right?
Oh, gangster.
Phenomenal,
Man
phenomenal,
is a
phenomenal CEO.
gangster. Um, and speaking of non-phenomenal CEOs, Bollywood star Akshay Kumar, who has often faced criticism over his Canadian citizenship, says India is everything to him and that he has already applied for a change of passport. Do you
His
believe
movie
Mr.
is also
Akshay Kumar?
bombed at the his movie also bombed at the box office this weekend. So not a great
Oh,
time for Akshay Kumar.
what
No, no,
movie did he
a movie called
come out in?
Selfie that came out with him and Imran Hashmi, but didn't do well. He
Oh,
hasn't
yeah,
had a he
because it
hasn't
was
had a
called
good run at the
Selfie.
box office for a while. He hasn't had a movie run well for him in a while now.
Should have thought of joining the Hindutva brigade a little more deeply and closely. But in any case, before I get cancelled and the show gets cancelled, what do you think of Zomato's new service called Everyday Man, the one that offers home cooked meals starting at INR 89?
Yeah, sometime back there was this whole phase of having like home chefs put stuff out there, right? And there was
Hmm.
also a push. I think it was early COVID, if I remember right, or I
Yeah.
don't remember if it was before that. I guess it's an extension or something to add to that. I mean, Zomato always keeps trying newer things. They always keep adding something, taking something off
Hmm.
as features, but this is interesting. Again, it comes down to the quality, comes down to the fact that is someone actually going to order this versus just ordering something else. What is the volume? And so I think there's a lot to see in terms of just how much volume they can generate from this, from maybe non-urban markets. Because I
Hmm.
think in the urban space it makes sense because people are coming to larger cities to work. But if you're scaling beyond that, is this really going to be something you do in places that are not like, let's say, central metros? Is my
Yeah.
only question.
Yes, Zomato has a way of staying in the news 24/7, so I'm not going to give the
Always,
story more oxygen.
always. Airtel is engaging with Paytm to explore the sale of Airtel Payments Bank in exchange for shares in the younger financial services firm. It seems to be a interesting thing for Airtel to really consolidate and really sharply focus on their telecom business, right? So they've taken.
Hmm.
I'm guessing some ways even Wink is no longer there, right? Is Wink still around? So I
I
haven't
have
heard
no
anyone speak
idea.
about Wink in a while. So I feel that at some point they're especially with their fight with Geo to really try and dominate the market, because now it's a two horse race in that sense of the word, because
Yeah.
Vodafone, which I'm a subscriber to, is far behind. I don't know why I'm still a Vodafone subscriber, but that's a whole different
Neither do I. Neither do I. And last quick
problem.
story for the day, because we've been rambling for 20 odd minutes. Cred is rolling out a buy now and pay later service. In Mr. Kunal Shah's infamous words, lending is a feature, and it is a feature definitely for Cred.
No, Creds
Unsurprising. I
is,
feel like this was a bound
I
to
think there's
happen.
any feature which is a fintech feature at some point is going to end up on Cred. And I think that eventual aim of this finance super app is what it's becoming. But how super and how large it is it, and how far does that burn last, is the question.
Yeah, but I feel like this is like the Airtel versus Jio play, no? If you have
Hmm.
HDFC on one end, which really is democratizing banking, can Cred be like the premium alter ego? So, but for that to play out the way we all would hope it plays out, there's
Hmm.
going to be more than just technology as a connect in between consumers and cash. You know what I mean? Like, it would be
Yeah.
interesting to see them in credit cards. It would be interesting, to see them in more in more like lighter ways of
Yeah.
banking and all things financial services. But we should actually chat about cred in one of our next couple of
Yeah.
episodes.
We should do a bit of a deep dive into credit and seeing how that is going. But what are we talking about today? There's interesting case that's happening in the US about should tech companies be liable for harmful content that's promoted by their algorithms. So we'll double tap into that a little bit. InfoEdge is writing off Rahul Yadav's latest startup. Oh, we haven't spoken about. Have you ever spoken about Rahul Yadav? We haven't brought him up. I don't think on the show yet, but it's about time. We also talk about how the Match Group is exploring investment in Shadi, which is on Shadi.com and a bunch of other brands there. And we
Mm.
also talk about Tastefluencers. Shephali Bhatt wrote a great article on what the whole Tastefluencer brigade is like. So we're going to tap into that. And yeah, so we want to talk about all of that. Before that, I should go talk to Beta Ramesh again, and we'll be back after this break.
Hello, hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. We are back with the second season of How to Citizen, hosted by Meghnad and Shreyas. The first episode of second season drops on February 26th. And guess who is our guest? Omar Abdullah, former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. So catch the episode now on the All About Now feed on IVM, YouTube and all streaming platforms. On Paisa Vaisa, Anupam talks to co-founder of Multiple, Vikas Jain, on a new strategy, Save Now, Buy Later, and how one can implement it in their daily life. On a niche thing, Anish talks to Priya Mirza, historian and lecturer, about the 5 most important things one should know about the Indian Constitution. On Pulyabazi, Khyati, Saurabh and Pranay talk about how China has aced the game of innovation to win the technology race. And on Just a Filmy Game Show, Antariksh quizzes comedians Mohammad Hussain and Sejal Bhatt with some filmy questions. New episodes are out on the IVM Pop feed. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on the ivmpodcast.com website. We have some exciting stuff for you. Follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. If you like our shows, spread the word, tell your friends, and don't forget to rate and review them wherever you're listening to them. You'll also find all our shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Yono SBI, Capgemini, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you for making this possible.
Welcome back to Think Fast with Ramesh and Roshni. Oh, sorry.
Oh my God. This is going to go on, isn't it? This is really going to go on for a
This is
while.
this episode's trend. Is I just have random names. Whoever is Ramesh, please don't mind. But what is the first story? What is the first story? Should tech companies be liable for harmful content promoted by algorithms? This is basically something that's happening in the US, where the Supreme Court is hearing, arguments in a case versus Google. There's a lawsuit that basically comes from the fact that a 23-year-old college student was killed by Islamic State gunmen in Paris, and so the whole point is that this happened because the algorithm promoted certain content which was put out by these gunmen and associates, and so in some ways they are also liable for what happened. Is the case, and they're actually hearing this case. We haven't had a case where any platform has even been brought into court to, in a way that they would actually be made to defend themselves in this case, because they've always had this whole scenario that we are not liable for the content. We're not content or a media business. We have platforms that people share stuff. So this seems to be an interesting moment. How far that goes is anyone's guess. What's your first reaction to this?
So I think evidently this is not going to go anywhere, because if you look at the context of the US, First Amendment, free speech is such an integral part of the way the book of law is
They
not
also have something
just,
called Section 230 as well, about just
yeah,
what tech companies can allow and not
yeah,
allow.
it's exactly. And I think because everything is so entrenched in this, whole thingamajig of like freedom of speech, cases like this, they may create a little bit of like brouhaha, but they will never ever see the light of the day in terms of changing of laws, because very fundamentally the argument made by any platform will be, we're not the person. So you want to hold anyone accountable, hold the person accountable who has done the deed or has done the act, or or whatever else. So as interesting as it may seem, and I'd obviously heard the conversation around this on Pivot, which is
Mm.
the podcast that both Varun and I thoroughly enjoy, with Kara Swisha and Scott Galway. But this is, nothing's going to happen, man. I think this is generally the problem with a lot of these blue sky thinking cases. Obviously, at the crux of it is, real tragedy, and people who've obviously been terribly affected by things like, and there's so many horrible things have happened. Look at what happened in Myanmar, which was
Yeah.
publicly posted, created, amplified on social media. You've also had all sorts of crazy things like gunmen going crazy in the US, and posting all sorts of anti-Islamist, anti-Jewish, Jews crap on these social
Mm.
media platforms. But none of these cases have seen absolutely any repercussion. And at a
Yeah.
fundamental level, there can't be, no. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like at a fundamental level,
I
what are you
guess the whole
fighting
point is
against?
to push against the law than to actually. So, in many ways, this could just be like a fine they might get, or they've been asked to change certain things. But if it pushes for the shift of, when you hold them responsible, even in a certain sense, you are then
Hmm.
fundamentally focusing on the law, which basically says that, the algorithmic recommendations isn't something which they're liable for, in that sense.
Hmm.
So once you have even a semblance of that there, I feel it could push the platforms to kind of, because most of these platforms have I would say they're more legal teams than coders in all these platforms now. And
Yeah.
so they might actually push for some form of controls over there, because once you
Hmm.
feel that even there's a small chance you might be held liable, you kind of do backtrack or build guardrails. And the reason why they haven't done that is because till now nobody has been able to even get them to this point. So I guess that's the only thing I see coming out of this, is that the fact that this has actually gone this far, and hopefully will go a little further. You will have some corrections kind of coming in, but again, I agree. I don't think there'll be much that will happen beyond just like that. I mean, that could be the best outcome you could get out of this, nothing more.
Yep, this is not going anywhere, guys. We can debate this endlessly, but it really is not going to see the light of the day.
Talking of seeing the light of the day, InfoEdge is writing off Rahul Yadav's latest startup. See that, good segue. Um,
Congratulations. You didn't call him Ramesh or
I did go.
Roshni or Ritik.
Ramesh Yadav. Oh, sorry. Rahul Yadav, yes. So InfoEdge is a company that owns 60% of Yadav's latest startup, which is 4B Networks. No longer sees any value. It has written it off. They own 60% of the company. Again, basically is another tech, property tech venture that he started less than 3 years ago. It was his comeback vehicle. It was supposed to become a Zomato or Uber or Ola of real estate. Is there another or that can be added there? Is my question. Can it be? What other ors do you want to add to this or of real estate, Suchita?
The housing.com of real
Oh, real
estate.
estate. Yeah, and if you think
Part
about it, and this
two.
is the thing, right? I remember the whole at the time when housing.com was in this whole
Hmm.
growth engine, and they were like, oh my god, this guy seems to really have cracked it. And you would hear these bizarre stories of just like how badly managed that company was, and just how the culture was supremely toxic, and so on and so forth. Um, it's it's often a question about saying how do founders like this get funded again and again. And this is
Hmm.
if not his startup, I don't think it's a startup he made right after this. I think there was briefly another one which he did, or tried to do right after he was made to leave housing.com, but even that
Hmm.
didn't work out. So it kind of begs the question as well, saying, you having write-offs like this happen, you've seen enough cases of this, but like look at Adam Newman getting another round of funding for his new
Yeah.
startup. They still seem to be getting money.
But okay, what you what, not to say that you're angry, but like what makes you mad or like not very happy about this whole situation? Is it that he got like three chances at starting up and pissed them all away, or is it just the amount of like money that's been lost in all of this?
I would actually say that if so, there is a line that I think you have many founders who will build businesses that will burn to the ground,
Hmm.
but they are better for it. They learn from it and they build better the next time. I would
Yeah.
never take away that learning from them. And in many ways, as if you're investing, you are doubling down and saying, "Oh, 1 second, this might just crash and burn. This might do well," and that's how an investor needs to think. But I feel the problem here is that if you're someone who has a history of just bad behavior
Hmm.
and you are continuing to fund that, and that for me is the larger issue. It's not, I don't think the issue is that, because I feel that if you have built something, even if it hasn't succeeded, if it has even if you have mismanaged it to a certain extent, you have
Yeah.
shown the ability to scale. And that's
Yeah.
something which most investors look for. This, okay, fair enough, we'll control the things that led to the crash and burn, but this person has shown the ability to scale a business. My larger issue
Hmm.
with Rahul Yadav is basically uh, the behavior, and just generally, if you're propagating the wrong things and you're still getting investment, then that is what I have an issue with.
But isn't that I don't know, man. Like I feel like he's not the only one, and I'm not saying that's why he
I
should
agree.
walk away scot free from any of this. But look at like someone like Nashneer Grover. I don't know if his
Yeah,
third unicorn has seen the light of the day or taken off. But
yeah,
can you just imagine how many bad role models and idols there are for entrepreneurs in this country? It's just wild and absurd.
yeah,
And actually, what's a little surprising is InfoEdge making this bet, because InfoEdge
yeah.
usually makes fairly like safe, stable, like quieter bets. Although
Hmm.
the general philosophy of 4B, which is his current startup that InfoEdge is obviously written off, it falls very well into that InfoEdge playbook, right? Of like a managed marketplace, this, that, and the other. But yeah, a little. I think the only thing that was surprising about this story was that the investor in this whole thingamajig was InfoEdge and not one of the larger guys. You'd assume like a
Yeah,
Lightspeed or one of these other big folks would be, like the Andreessen Horowitz in this
yeah,
situation, who are
yeah. And
coming
also,
back and backing this guy.
and also, if you see that they invested 276 crores into this venture over several tranches, and this is interesting piece in the article, and I think this is from Morning Context, is that at the heart of this chaos, basically the business model was flawed and it was inept execution. This is from people who were former executives, and they said that all everybody was trying to focus on was to game the system to make money with little focus on long-term viability. Sounds like housing.com. Sounds like housing.com.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Basically, man has not learned from his mistakes.
Yes. He says, I'm not building housing.com. I'm building house.com. It's a whole different thing, is what he has done.
And it's called 4B.
And they still gave him money.
It's wild, dude. This world of like VC and investing is, I've been out of it now for uh, 6, 7 odd months.
Hmm.
And I mean, I have a lot of respect for some investors who are
Hmm.
just like a class apart in terms of
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
understanding of markets, this, that, and the other. But the whole ecosystem, otherwise, I don't know, man. I've like thoroughly enjoyed the 7 month
Away from it.
break I've had from the cacophony of it all.
Yes.
I know you're not like entrenched in it, as you're entrenched in more as an angel investor and, as
Yeah.
someone who knows people from within the ecosystem.
Yeah.
What do you make of it as like an insider outsider?
So here's the thing, right? And I look at different people and how they've been able to look at the ecosystem and really understand. Like I have immense respect for the founders of Boat, for the simple
Hmm.
fact that they focused on profitability from day one. And I feel oftentimes just because how valuations work and the focus
Hmm.
on top line is so high, the tendency for investors as well as founders is to focus on just top line growth and not focus on profitability, and that
Hmm.
on leads to the problem, because you want to build unique, you want everyone to be a unicorn, you want everyone to kind of hit that huge top line growth, and see that is the market size large enough to be able to become that. Um, and and I feel that's really the problem, is that you're just building for the next round and you're looking at that, you're not looking at building at the fundamental part of what you're building is a business, and a business needs to make profit, it needs to make sense, it needs to be built on fundamentals. That somehow I feel has lost focus, and it tends to lose focus in the midst of everything else. And like I said, the good investors are the ones who realize that, and make sure
Yeah.
that's focused on. But unfortunately, a lot of the others get just stuck in the hype
Caught
cycle.
up in all of it. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
there's this really interesting tweet that I saw by Abhay Pandey, who runs A91.
Mm.
And he, posted saying an LP recently asked the question, what does it take for a company to go public in India? My confident response, 100 crore EBITDA. LP says, in your 16 years of investing, how many startups have you seen achieving that? And his last line, Abhay Pandey's last line is my response, that monkey emoji with his like eyes
Yeah.
shut.
Yeah.
So it's to your point, right? Like it's
Mm.
crazy how few companies have truly been able to build this and drive this forward. And
Mm.
I guess if we choose to continue to invest in people like Rahul Yadav, more of this will happen.
Yes. Yes. We're now talking about this interesting Milan of Match Group and Shadi.
Hmm.
It's an interesting match. The Nasdaq listed Match Group, which owns everything from Tinder, Hinge, Match, OkCupid, Plenty of Fish, which is a platform I did not know about. And our time, they're considering an investment into Shadi, which is the Anupam Mittal founded company, and it seems like they're trying to complete the circle. Meet on Tinder, eventually get married. All they need is diapers.com.
Yes, and now that you've rehearsed that joke at least thrice and very adeptly delivered it to the earbuds of our listeners. No, I think this is great, man. And also for a country like India, I feel like if you're not playing the marriage game, then what game are you actually even playing at all?
Agreed.
You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
all comes back to that. I feel like platforms like Tinder, Bumble, and all are cool, but I think they're still very tier one ish platforms.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, like Sarita and Hoshiarpur, like, swiping left and right on Bumble to find a match. So
You have
TLDR,
something for Sarita and
great
Kanpur.
bet.
Your favorite person
Okay,
in the world is Sarita.
Hoshiarpur, bro, Hoshiarpur. You also have
Hmm.
something for Ramesh. Let's not forget.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
My Ramesh is your who? I forget.
Sarita from Hoshiarpur.
Sarita. So
Love you,
Sarita from
Sarita.
Ocean.
Love you. Yes.
Yes.
No,
Um,
but this is I think this is a great bet, man, and very 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 nicely made. Also, I like that they figured out their groove in India. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Tinder's been
Yeah.
in India for a while.
Yeah.
They've launched their suite of products one step at a time, and this is a nice like full stop to their journey.
Yeah, and if you see this, that they've actually announced a revamp leadership team with, when they've said they have four key businesses: there's Tinder, Hinge, Asia, and Evergreen and Emerging,
Hmm.
which is an interesting way to kind of break things up, right? Is that Asia and Evergreen is one category. I just to kind of clarify, and so it seems to be an interesting way for them to say, okay, we got to deal with each of these in different ways, but it seems to be that they've also understood like you said, how to look at different markets differently and understand cultural nuances and play to that. And looking at this kind of a breakup, it makes total sense for them to look at Shadi.
Yeah. Also, I mean, if you look at the age group, right, in India, what's the, let me run with an assumption over here. I'm assuming the average age, not the, tier one alpha consumer marriage age, but I'm assuming the average age will be in between that 24 to 26,
Hmm.
which would be the dating game in any other country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is like the
Yeah.
marriage game here. So this to appeal to that consumer who's sitting in the middle, in between that 24 to 27, is slam
Yeah.
dunk. Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
I would give a consumer perspective, but I have no consumer perspective because in my time we used kabutars. After kabutars seems to have been Tinder, but I missed the Tinder bus. I only did kabutars.
Great joke. You've also used this the second or third time in Think Fast collectively. But what do you think will happen to, others who've been in this field, right? So, for example, there's like Truly Madly. Remember, there was a
Hmm.
time when so many matchmaking apps had come up in India.
Yeah.
There's,
There's also
Bumble, of
Bumble.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you think happens to the rest? Where does everyone go running?
Um, I don't think it's about them going running, but I guess they got to find their own options and opportunities. And I feel for Match because it's also a slightly more mature ecosystem for them because they've kind of built multiple brand names, etc. I still for Bumble, everybody has still like singular brands in that sense of the word. So I guess they function differently, and Match is
Hmm.
kind of playing at a very different scale from the others. Although Bumble famously obviously was founded by someone who was part of Tinder, the founder CEO, and she kind of left because of issues she had with how that platform was run. It
Hmm.
kind of begs the question that, especially in a market like India and any market which has even a certain amount of culturally different way of looking at this, does it then do you have to deal with it in this way that you actually bring on a platform like Shadi to kind of cover that gap versus maybe for a Bumble and others you got to build it for this consumer.
Hmm.
That would
Yes.
be my
Very
perspective.
interesting. Lovely
Yes.
perspective. Vataj, inshallah.
And for our last story of the day, there was an interesting article by one of our favorite writers here at Think Fast Journalists, Shephali Bhatt, along with Wangmai Parakala, if I pronounce her name right. It's about tastefluencers. Are you a tastefluencer?
Excuse, I am OG Tastefluencer. Bhulo mat.
What is your taste? Tell me.
Only the best.
Oh, only
Hello,
best.
Varun.
Only best furniture
Varun.
taste. Furniture taste.
Excuse, only best furniture, only best books, and
Hmm.
only best textiles, and only best local discoveries. Exqueeze. How can you forget? No, but before I lagao extra tarif about myself and become just like you, Varun, what was your
Welcome to the
what was
dark
your
side. Come on.
what was your takeaway from this article? And I'll get to mine because I was the one who posted this to discuss in this Think Fast episode.
So
But
it's interesting, right? I
yeah.
mean, she obviously talks about how, across there are many creators who are curating content. We've spoken about this whole curation creator now. It's been around for ages, right? You and I have spoken about
Hmm.
there's a curation economy, is that a thing, etc. But it's interesting the categories that are working. So you have people who are creating playlists on Spotify,
Hmm.
and in some ways they're kind of monetizing that by, there's this. I think the article starts interestingly with someone made a playlist, creator made this playlist of the Sid Kiara wedding playlist, right? Kind of obviously kind of scaled up from there. That became a
Yeah.
big thing, and obviously he's been around for a while making these playlists. So things like playlists, things like just articles you want to consume or like go very niche. And it has been the thing for this tastefluencer or curation creator. But I actually feel that this will still always be niche. It won't scale unless you
Hmm.
add other elements to it, because the creator side has massive scale because you're creating a large amount of content, right? As much as there is curation, I don't know how you can scale curation while still being true to what worked for you when you started. I haven't seen a great example of that. I mean, I have an interesting perspective on, like, let's say a platform like Houdinki in the States, which
Yeah.
became almost like this OG, very focused on the watch market, and I'm a huge consumer. But over time, they've been getting backlash because as the bigger they got, they had to become more lifestyle and
Yeah.
less like watch nerd, and so suddenly the core audience you were serving at the beginning kind of
Appealing
felt
to, yeah.
it got diluted, so they went to other places. And so it's that problem, is that is this something that will always be a side gig, and will it ever scale? I have perspective on what can actually scale across curation and creation, but I'm going to let you put your points in.
Thank you so much for giving me oxygen on this podcast, Varun.
You let me talk, I shall talk.
Oh, yes, I know. No, but now I actually look like a bhutni in Ahad because I have very comfortably, found myself in the real crevice of this chair. But I think the reason why I feel so strongly about the story is two things. LBB was started for exactly this reason, right? It was
Yeah,
started for our original thesis on day one was that the internet's getting crowded, and because the internet's getting crowded, and platforms like Book My Show and Zomato just have anything and everything, can we become a voice of reason? And you're totally right. I think the problem that happens is so many of these businesses start as niches, but there is a solve, right, which I think worked in our case. And I think, for example, not to sort of like juxtapose, but I think has also worked very well in cases like yours. In
mm,
cases like, for example, like Ankur Wariku or whatever else,
mm,
where essentially your business model becomes a sum of parts.
yeah,
Because when you are a sum of parts, and it helps you keep that niche, but it just
yeah,
basically helps you play on that single metric of like average revenue per user.
yeah,
Because you're not monetizing that user only through one thing. You found more ways to speak with this user, right?
yeah,
And if I had to look at a super scaled example of that, I'd look at, for instance, someone like Mr. Beast. Now obviously he's not a curator, he's a creator.
yeah,
Though he has dabbled in reaction videos, and like he's
yeah,
done a bunch of really interesting shit with his YouTube.
yeah,
But basically the solve for this is, how do you think of your business model as a mix of B2C plus B2B? Tanmay
mm,
is another great example of,
yeah,
almost like being like a mini agency on the side, while
yeah,
also obviously doing whatever he has to do as a curator, creator
yeah.
of sorts. So I think my like flash in the pan hot take would be this, and I think the second thing, obviously, which I'm going to toot my horn about, is I was the one who predicted this. Not that Shefali took a cue from my prediction at all, because I'm sure she has better things to do than listen to Think Fast. Though you, dear listeners, are great, and we appreciate you for tuning in. But just getting to the prediction that I had made for 2023, I'd said that the future of the internet will really be in forms of platforms like Substack, podcasting, so on and so forth. Because the biggest thing that they do is they give creators credibility on the internet,
Mm,
which is going to be the next wave of growth. So
yeah,
the long point that I'm getting to with my point B, is I feel like this is an interesting time to build platforms that help you signal credibility on the internet.
yeah,
I know I like briefly alluded to it in our last episode recording,
mm,
but I feel like there has never been a better time to enable others to have a share of voice on the internet
yeah.
than right now. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but those would be my two pieces.
So there are two things, right? One is to mention Tanmay, and I feel that at some point at the cross section of creation and curation is the reaction video space. There's so much content happening in the reaction space. Their entire creators who built, I mean, literally their entire content just on reacting to things, and you see that reacting to everything from a new trailer. Like, I mean, one of my favorite examples from like just literally fandom, right, is that there's a channel called New Rockstars, and what New Rockstars does now, there are multiple channels they have, is they react to every single movie trailer, every movie that's come out. They have so many things they do with just like reacting to film collateral that comes out. Obviously, a lot more in the nerd space. We'll have stuff around, let's say, Marvel and DC and everything else. And now they're going beyond that to doing even other trailers, etc. So again, you're still curating. You are curating the information together for me to understand context before I watch a movie, or understand the Easter eggs that I might not have spotted in it, and stuff like that. Otherwise, I would have to go research all those things. But I feel what it also brings is, at the simplistic level, what Tanmay does is a great example. Every week he just collates together some of the best memes online, and four people on a Zoom call are just reacting to it, and all the whole audience, including me, is just laughing with them. That at the most basic level is the reaction video example, which works already. You're curating it, but you're also reacting, so you're making the consumer feel like they are part of the same community and the experience. I feel that's the soft spot to hit scale, is you have to figure how the reaction can work. How does the community aspect come in? Because with newsletters as well, what really works is recommendations of what you can kind of read, etc. But more and more, because of the volume of newsletters available, how do you again build interactions? How do you build community? How do you get people to engage a lot more? I feel, you're seeing that if you can kind of cover that curve of community is when you can build curation further. But if you don't have that, it's going to be, I mean, you don't know how much you'll retain that audience. And there's one more piece, and I know a few startups that are doing stuff in it. This is a company called Supershare, which I'm an early investor in, and what they're actually kind of solve for is to use the link in bio, and an entire platform piece where you can actually have people and fans really engage with your content, and they as curate your consumers and can actually interact with the content and become curators for other people to discover your content from. It's a very interesting piece. It's in very early stage testing. It should be out for a certain set of people starting next month. So once that's out, I want to see how that plays out, because you're slowly seeing the fact that if I am a consumer of your content, I want to be more involved in yours, and if I almost become like a super fan who's curating more of your content, do I get
Yeah.
something from it? And that's
Yeah.
what companies like these are solving for, and I'm kind of bullish on that. The fan becoming the super fan to becoming the curator, and I think that could be an interesting evolution of this.
And I think the other angle related to this SUP example, right, is
Yeah,
everything doesn't have to be a full-time job.
yeah,
Some things are actually best kept as side hustles.
yeah,
For those of you who are tuning in, one of you, may thoroughly enjoy watching a lot of movies, or may really enjoy, reading a shit ton of books and posting summaries of those online. I'm just saying everything doesn't, things that you're passionate about could
mm,
very well continue being exactly that, right? Just great passions.
yeah,
And I feel like if like models like this, right, whether
yeah,
it's blogging, or you see so many fashion blogs making a big comeback.
yeah.
In fact, there's this very good article on Business of Fashion about these new age fashion bloggers. Like, remember when we guys, I don't know if you used to do this. Were you ever Tumblr user?
Briefly, not for too long.
So do you remember the sartorialist? Like
Yeah,
that
yeah. Of course,
super famous.
I still follow him on
Yeah,
Instagram.
see, there you go. So people like him really became like breakout stars on
Yeah,
platforms like Tumblr.
yeah.
But same thing, right? That doesn't have to pay 100% of your bills. But
So my thing
if
is
stuff
this:
like this stays in,
compare
huh?
him to a diet Sabya, and I'm like, that's just taking that but adding a little bit of a layer on top of it. Like, he's not doing commentary, but you're going to it for the visual, but the layer you add on is to make that into diet Sabya is what I think is interesting.
Hmm. And where
Not
do you go with that?
And with that, you can actually kind of build more pieces of content and figure smarter ways to monetize as well, right? Because it becomes like, would I pay for like an insider look into their perspective beyond this? Like, is there an OnlyFans version of diet Sabya? I would go for that. Get my
No,
goss.
but oh God, jealous me. You're like really exciting the Gen
Jalasmi and
Z
I are diet
amongst
Sabya
us.
fans. Diet Sabya
Oh
fans.
God, I find them terrible. But there's this other really cool Instagram handle to check out called style.com.
Hmm.
And this guy is like excellent. He's actually like the OG insider. He gives you insider tippany on the coolest fashion, not the coolest, but like on literally all the best fashion shows happening across all the top fashion weeks. He's kind of like, if you ever followed style.com, we can cut this all out the episode.
Hmm.
But basically, long story short, like what you said, right? This, how do you
Hmm.
give live commentary on things but make
Hmm.
it interesting, and also make it
Yes.
like a thing to,
I get it.
like reckon with.
I think the
But
solution
that's
is
the
that I should
thing,
become a
right?
fashion influencer. It's time.
Acha, okay, no, we'll cut all this out of the episode because it's rambling. But bro, like, I mean, think about it. Like,
Yeah.
everything doesn't have to be a million
I
dollar
agree.
job,
I agree. It
right?
doesn't
Like,
have to. No, I'm in agreement with you, but I'm just saying that how do you? The problem is that a lot of people kind of get into this, and after a point of time, they worry about, okay, is this only going to be a hobby or a side hustle? Is this ever going to become something I can just do for life? But you are seeing cases with, I think the transition will only be when you go reaction, or when you kind of transition to saying, okay, are there more things I can do to make people pay for things around my content? That's the only way someone can become full-time. Otherwise, like you said, it's going to be a side gig. It's not going to be a full-time piece. And you just got to be okay with that. But I don't foresee this,
But
because
I
even
feel
the
like that behavior needs to become mainstream. The problem right now is because of Instagram. Every chomu who has a fucking phone thinks they can become the next like Kusha Kapila, right? And you're just like, dude, one to aise nahi hota hai, right? And the second is just because you're passionate about something, that doesn't mean you're good enough to make it a full-time job. And I
Well, as
think,
long as you make money, I think that it comes down to one core thing, right? Can you make enough money doing this that you can do just this? And most of them actually are being smart about it. I think a lot of creators being smart about the fact that they're not trying to do this, and not trying to quit their jobs and do this when they don't have sustainable income in that sense. I end up speaking to a lot of the creators in this space who, when they take that call, and I know how much all of them kind of think about this call, because some of them have jobs, some of them have just finished college, and it's a tough choice to make. So, which is my whole point, is that this only works if you're going to say, okay, no, this is just a fun thing I want to do. It's not necessarily something I want to do
yeah.
only. But the problem is, if someone considers this as the only thing they will do, then it's going to be a tough one for them to scale.
Great point.
And on this
And
note,
with that,
we're going to close the episode, but wait, we still have a recommendation. I have a recommendation for this week. Ready? Do you have a recommendation?
yes, I do.
So you go first.
Okay, my recommendation is this book I've just started reading, but I love this author, Siddhartha Mukherjee. Is his new book is called The Song of the Cell, and it's basically like a part of like so he's the same guy who wrote The Gene, Emperor of Maladies, and essentially this book is built around the role that the cell plays in everything, right? From like cancer to autoimmune diseases and the other. I am absolutely no fan of biology, medicine, or any of that, especially because my mom is a doctor. But just the way he writes, man, Siddhartha Mukherjee, The Song of the Cell, is my recommendation for this week. And Mr. Varun, sir, what are you recommending, sir?
My recommendation actually is a show that I know has been out for a bit, but I just started to watch it and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Is the show called Fuzzy, which is by Rajan DK, the guys who made Family Man. It's just a lot of fun. I mean, I've watched. I mean, not since Family Man have I had this much fun watching an Indian series. I mean, I enjoyed Class, but this is a whole different kind of fun. And just the smartness which some of the things they've done, I thought was very interesting. Is that it's like people from different states in the country, you made them speak their language authentically. You not try to dub it or have them try to speak another one. And even if you have a character who is from like Vijay Sethupathi, who's an important character in that, is not a Hindi speaking actor, but he's spoken Hindi exactly like how someone from the Tamil industry would speak Hindi if they weren't fluent. And so it's just very nicely done. It's a lot of fun. It's just the exact kind of show I enjoy watching, and I think people will too. It's got some banger performances in there. I'm like halfway through.
This is with Shahid Kapoor.
Yeah, so Shahid Kapoor actually, weirdly enough, for me is not the weakest point, but he's the one with the least amount of fun in the show. Although he's the main protagonist, everybody else is just phenomenal compared. They have there's so much more. The other people are a lot more interesting than he is, but you don't even notice that part.
Vah Taj, Vah Taj.
And
And with
on
that,
that
we have an
note,
episode.
we have an episode, so that next time you come back, not as Roshni without Ujala, but you will sit in the light, and Vishnu shall be okay with your lighting and mic placement. And I shall not do stupid things like I did again this week of doing 3 podcasts in a day, and this is my 3rd one, and I want to finish this and calm my throat. That is it for this episode. Toodles and
Great.
poodles.
Bye, my friends.